Do you find yourself going to fiber festivals and coming home with a bunch of random skeins that you have no idea what to do with? Let's talk about it. Hey everyone, welcome back to Karchermakes. I'm Andrea, coming to you from South Central Pennsylvania, and this is the place where I like to share all the crafty things, knitting, spinning, weaving, crochet. If it has anything to do with yarn and fiber, I love it, and I hope you love it here too. Let's get into it. So, as I'm recording this on Sunday, April 27th, 2025, Maryland Sheep and Wool is this upcoming weekend, so May 3rd and 4th, and I need to plan. I cannot go to a fiber festival without a plan. I've been going to festivals for a decade now, and over those 10 years I've learned that going into a festival and not having a plan and not having a budget is sort of disastrous, because I get wooed by all the pretty things and then I end up with a bunch of very beautiful yarns but no idea what to do with them. And I really would like to be more intentional about what comes into my stash. And look, in these economic times, gotta also kind of stay on budget. We'll see if that happens. But at least having an idea going in of what I want to get, what I want to spend is really important to me. And hopefully you find this helpful and maybe learn some things that you can incorporate into your planning and budgeting too. So first up, let's just talk logistics. Before we get into a plan and a budget, we really need to understand what are the logistics of this festival. And I'm lucky that I am local to Maryland Sheep and Wool. It's within driving distance. It's about an hour from me, and I can just make it a day trip. Not everybody has that luxury. So the first thing when it comes to planning is really understanding your travel versus local situation. So obviously, if you're traveling in for a fiber festival, you have to maybe plan and budget for some extra expenses that maybe somebody like me who's local to the festival doesn't have to worry about. That includes hotel, Airbnb, your meals, your fuel, if you drive a gas-powered vehicle, charging stations on the way, if you drive an electric vehicle, tolls, and all of that needs to be a part of your budget. I did travel to one fiber festival before. That was Rhinebeck in 2019, I believe. And obviously my yarn and fiber budget was lessened because we had to pay for the Airbnb, the gas, the travel, all of that stuff. Once you have your travel portion kind of mapped out and understanding how you need to budget for those expenses, then we get into the fun stuff, the actual festival. So yes, the cost is a piece of it, but also there are other aspects of the festivals that I personally like to plan for. So for one, really understanding the location of the festival and the times of the festival. So for Maryland Sheep and Wool, they open very early in the morning, but they don't allow people to come in before that opening time. They have a gate. So understanding the gate time is important. The other thing in particular with Maryland Sheep and Wool is the cost to get in. And I think a lot of fiber festivals now are charging. There's a few that are still free, like Frederick Fiber Fest, for example, is still free. But more and more often, the bigger fiber festivals are charging because they have a big expense into putting the show on in the first place. The tents, the food trucks, the space, all of that. So what I like to do is, that's my first line item on my budget, is how much does it cost to go into the festival? Number one. Now, at least with Maryland Sheep and Wool, you can buy your tickets in advance and they do give you a small discount on that ticket. However, last year, the gate for prepaid tickets it had to be at least a couple hundred people long when I got there. And I don't buy tickets in advance. I pay at the gate. I was able to walk right in, and I got there last year at like 8:45, 9 o'clock, which was right around opening time. I think they opened the gate at 8:30. So for me, it's worth the extra $2 or $3 not to get the prepaid discount and then just walk right in when I get there. Hopefully this year is the same. So another thing to consider when you're planning your Fiber Festival trip is the parking situation. Now, I have so much stress about parking when I go places. Are you like this, or are you normal? I don't know what it is about parking and stress with me. I have to know ahead of time, even if we're just going to like a new restaurant, right? I need to know ahead of time, what is the parking situation? Do I gotta park in a garage? Do I gotta park on a lot? Do I have to park on the street? Like, I wanna know all the details about the parking situation, and Fiber Festivals are no different. At least with Maryland Sheep and Wool, they have tons of ample parking. However, it is in a grass field, and if the weather from the past few years dictates, that grass field gets real muddy real fast. And if you have a small car, you're probably going to get stuck in the mud. Now, they do have Boy Scouts that help push your vehicles out, and of course Good Samaritans will help. But the past couple years, I've taken my boyfriend's truck, which is 4-wheel drive, to just avoid that whole situation altogether, because again, parking stresses me out. I don't know why I'm like this. So like I just mentioned, the past few years have been rainy years at Maryland Sheep and Wool, and it never seems to fail. It is either really super nice or really not. There's really no in between with this festival. So what I like to do, because the weather in Maryland is so unpredictable, I plan for everything. I plan to wear layers. I bring a rain jacket. I wear my muck boots. Because it gets, like I said about the parking, the festival also gets kind of muddy, and I just want to be prepared for that. Now, when I go to local fiber festivals, I bring in a tote bag with some drinks. They do allow you to bring in your own food and drinks. So I'll bring in some drinks in my tote bag. I will maybe bring in some snacks, depends on how I'm feeling that morning. And I usually plan to eat lunch at the festival. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that a lot of the food truck vendors, in my experience in the past, do not take cards. So I make sure that I bring cash to be able to pay for the lunch. Cash is also good to bring just in case there's issues with vendors being able to run credit cards. I've seen situations in the past where they were unable to successfully swipe cards. They thought it went through, it didn't go through, people took their items, left, and then they ended up not getting paid for it. So I don't want that to happen. I tend to bring cash if at all possible, and then I use my credit card as a backup if needed. So now that we have the actual sort of logistics out of the way, let's talk about the festivals themselves. So a lot of festivals have an events calendar that they'll publish ahead of time, where there's workshops, there's demonstrations, and in the case of Maryland Sheep and Wool, there's also an auction that is on Saturday afternoon, and it's really helpful to kind of take a look at that ahead of time and really plan where you want to be at what time. The festival grounds aren't that large. Obviously, it's festival grounds, but if you want to be in a place at a certain time for a certain thing, you just want to make sure that you're aware of how far things are from one another and that you're able to get to where you need to be on time. So for example, the sheepdog demonstrations, they do have seating, like bleacher seating around that area. It fills up fast. So if it starts at, just say, I don't have the calendar in front of me. If it starts at 11, you may want to get there 20 or 30 minutes early if you need to get a seat. So in terms of the actual shopping plan, what I like to do is a lot of the festivals will put on their website a map and then a list of the vendors. And Maryland Sheep and Wool in particular does a really good job at this. Their list of vendors actually calls out who is new to the festival for that year and then also who is local to Maryland. And as somebody who appreciates local products, supporting local businesses, I like that they do that so that I can incorporate that into my plan. Another thing that is helpful to do with the vendors is plan in advance for some of the more popular vendors. So for example, Miss Babs. I feel like a lot of people just make a beeline to her booth, both at Rhinebeck and Maryland Sheep and Wool. Her yarns are very popular and the line gets very, very long. So what I do is I kind of plan to go to Miss Babs later in the afternoon. Once that line subsides, once people, the early birds kind of get there and get what they need, I'll make a round and then hit her booth as one of the last things that I do. Just because I don't like standing in lines. I can't stand a line. Sidebar, I hate waiting, which is weird because I take my knitting everywhere and waiting's not that big of a deal. But like if I go to a restaurant and they're like, oh, it's a 40-minute wait, I'm going somewhere else. I'm not waiting. So to get an idea of what products vendors are bringing to the festival, social media is your best friend. Now, I don't think there's a lot of activity on Ravelry forums these days for the festival. I do know they have a group and there's boards and people do post there, but it's not like it was like 10 years ago when I started going. It feels like a lot of that activity has kind of moved over to social media. So Maryland Sheep and Wool in particular does have like a Facebook group where the vendors will come in and post like, hey, these are my new products. This is my show color. This is what I plan on bringing to the festival. And that's really helpful to help you get an idea of, you know, the products that you like, the products that you want, and what you can kind of do with those products, right? If somebody shares like, oh, here's my show color that I'm bringing to the festival, I can go through my patterns and say, I really like that. What could I make with that? And then plan accordingly. So the other thing that I like to plan for when I go to a fiber festival is taking time to see all of the animals. Like, that is my favorite part. I know shopping for yarn and fiber and petting all the lovelies is a great time, but it's really the animals that I like to see. And they do at some fiber festivals. I know they do this at Maryland, and they do this at the Maryland Alpaca Festival that happens in the fall. They'll do like a parade of the animals. So at Maryland, it's the sheep parade. At the Alpaca Festival, it's the alpaca parade, and I just really enjoy seeing that. I know Rhinebeck has an event where they have the alpacas and animals like jump over the little gate things, and the kids take them around and then they win a prize. And I just love the interaction with the animals. I like interacting with the farmers who are raising these animals and learning more about the breed and why they chose to raise that breed. And for me, that's really enjoyable. Okay, so let's get into the yarn buying planning portion of this program. So let's first talk budget. Let's kind of get that out of the way. And look, I know talking about money is very taboo in society. And even in the yarn community, there's kind of thoughts and feelings about yarn and yarn prices and, acrylic versus wool. And people have very strong feelings about all of these things. And what I'm going to say about that is, do you? If you like the expensive hand-dyed cashmere silk, go for it. If you like acrylic, do that. Do what works for you, and really that's what's important. And when I talk about the budget here, and I'm going to give some specific numbers, that's not to say that that's the only way to do it. Your budget could be significantly less and you can still have a very fun experience at a fiber festival. I've been to some festivals and bought nothing. It's happened. It's not often that it happens, but it happens. And, it's something that's so highly personal to people that, don't feel like just because one person does something, that means you have to do it too. For me, I budget approximately $30 per skein of yarn because, I do like hand-dyed yarn. There's some yarns that are cheaper than that. There's some yarns that are more than that. But as I'm setting my budget, that's where I kind of draw the baseline. And what I do throughout the year, I maintain kind of a household budget. And I know what I like to spend on gas. I know what I like to spend on groceries. I know what I like to spend on utilities. And I try to stick to that. Now, there's always exceptions. But, the main point is all of my major must-have household things are budgeted for and paid for. Now, with my hobbies, I do have a hobby budget. And for yarn festivals in particular, I like to kind of earmark $100 to $200 a month to spend at these festivals. Again, your budget's going to be highly personal to you. And for me, I don't have kids. So that's an expense I don't have in my life that I can kind of filter into my hobbies. Now, yours may look very different. So that budget is what gets split across all of the fiber festivals that I like to go to. And at least where I am, I'm very lucky. There's so many local festivals. There's Maryland Sheep and Wool, like we've been talking about. There's Frederick Fiber Fest. There's Maryland Alpaca Festival. There's Knitters Day Out. There's I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's in Berryville, Virginia. Let me look at my notes. I think it's Shenandoah Valley Fiber Festival. I've never actually been to it. It's 2 hours away, but I think this year I might try to get out there. Point being, that seems like a lot of money, but I also spread that across all of the fiber festivals that I want to try to attend. So in addition to the yarn, my budget also covers things like notions, project bags, merchandise. And I know at least for Maryland Sheep and Wool this year, they shared the photos of their merchandise this year. And for me, I tend not to buy the shirts every year. I've bought one shirt one time and it was like a prior year that I had never even been to, and it was on clearance. They had a bunch of $5 clearance shirts, so I bought one. But typically I don't buy the merch, but this year's artwork is so cute that I may have to take a detour through the merch barn to get that. So planning for specific projects. This is just what I like to do. I keep a running list of things that I want to make. And then in Ravelry, I have in the favorites, I make bundles by type of pattern. So I have a t-shirt bundle, an advent bundle, a cardigan bundle, a pullover bundle, a sock bundle, and that just helps me keep organized with the things that I like. When it comes time to do the Fiber Festival plan, I use that as reference to say, okay, what is it that I really want to kind of make next or soon or soon-ish. And I take that and compare that against what I'm seeing from the vendors, what vendors are available, what they're sharing on their social medias that they'll be bringing. And then I try to at least have an idea in my head as to what I want to purchase based on that list of projects. So helpful things to note when going to a fiber festival, bringing a project plan with you. Just a few items. Number one is really understanding the yarn requirements. And when I say yarn requirements, I mean the type, the fiber, the amount, the weight, the quantity. Should you buy extra? I tend to buy a little bit of extra. If I need, for example, a project, I'm making a t-shirt project and it requires 790 yards of fingering weight yarn. Typically that's 2 skeins, but depending on what it is, I may sometimes buy an extra 3rd skein just in case, because a lot of these indie dyers and a lot of these local farms that bring yarn to these festivals, it's not always something that you can always get again. Sometimes it's a limited edition run, sometimes it's a colorway that they only do for festivals, or the dye lot's going to be different if you try to buy it later. So I tend to err on the side of caution and just buy enough that I can be sure I do not run out of that color. So another helpful thing, and I know not everybody uses Ravelry, but going through the Ravelry projects of a given pattern and seeing what yarns other people use, that can really help inform you on how to substitute yarn. And this is a whole other topic that I can maybe talk about in a later video, which is yarn substitutions. But I find it really helpful to go through those prior projects, clicking on the Yarn Ideas tab at the top, and then that gives you like a listing of here's the yarns everybody who has ever made this pattern. These are the yarns that they use to do it. And then from there, you can really see what the fiber content is, the length, the weight, and then more easily substitute a different yarn in for that pattern. The way that I kind of keep track of all of this pattern and yarn information for projects is in my phone. I use the Notes app, and I'll pull it up here. I use the Notes app, and hopefully you can see that, and I just make a list. I list out projects that I want to plan for, and then I also list out any sort of notions or other types of things that I want to be on the lookout for as I'm at the festival. And that just really helps keep me on track so that I don't end up blowing the budget and ending up with a bunch of random skeins of yarn. Okay, so let's just recap very quickly. Fiber Festival planning and budgeting. Know where you're going, know what the parking situation is, make a plan, make a budget, try to stick to it. I don't always stick to my budget. Very rarely do I completely go over the budget and blow it. I'm at least within 10 to 20% of it usually. So I hope you found this Fiber Festival planning and budgeting video helpful. If you did, give this video a thumbs up. Click the subscribe button for more. I will be back in a week or two with my Maryland Sheep and Wool vlog, haul probably. And until then, happy making.